So Clarko, and he's not very good at drawing because on the whiteboard, he drew an outline of a shark on the whiteboard before we ran out. And I didn't know what it was. It was a hippopotamus or an elephant. I said, what's that on the board? Corey, grand finals, but moments in grand finals. So it's not just all about the game, it's whatever stays in that mind of yours and mine. And we've got a few unbelievable games right in front of us.
We got more than a few. I reckon we got 10 absolute cracking games. Which one do you want to start with first? I'm thinking Hawthorn, Sydney, 2012. What's the famous footage on the wing with Dennis Cometti calling Jeddah when he's bouncing? Yes.
Yes, I'm going to defend Cyril because we know Jeddah was like lightning, but Cyril had a bit of a back injury as well, so he was never...
So you're making excuses for Cyril that he wasn't quick enough?
Well, in that game, yes. Do you know what I loved about that game? Obviously, not Hawthorn winning, but because they didn't win, but it was Sydney's effort. Sydney had 3 guys on one leg. They were injured, and it was all about effort and willpower, and it was a remarkable win. And if anything, I think it stirred Hawthorn on to go on and do well over the next few years. But that was one of the great grand finals on effort and team applications.
And it was.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to go a bit left field here. Richmond up against the Giants. Not a very good game, let's be honest. Richmond just dominated and were amazing and deserved to win that premiership. The Giants unfortunately played the grand final the week before, so they had nothing left. But this game was all about one guy, and it was Marlon Pickett. One game, one goal, one grand final. What a way to start a career.
And he played in the grand final in the reserves the week before, didn't he? And he might have even got best on ground in that as well.
Yeah, so it's a massive call for a coach. Imagine if Richmond didn't win that and everyone would come back to that decision on one player.
Would you retire if you won a Norm Smith in your first game?
Well, you'd pretty much pull a pin. It can't get any better.
Done. He's got his life membership, got a Norm Smith and a premiership. I'm out for all the Collingwood fans out there, and I was one of them. 1990, Essendon versus Collingwood now.
Now you need to declare something about Collingwood.
That I was in the cheer squad.
That's correct.
I still couldn't get a ticket for the grand final though. One of the defining things when I walked in there was for a lot of Collingwood fans, not for a lot of Essendon fans, but for all the Collingwood fans out there, I think, I don't know if does it make the cut? I don't know if it makes the cut.
It's pretty close. It was a remarkable game, and it did have a hamburger with a lot. It had everything in it. Well, Collingwood, St Kilda, 2010. Oh, talk about moments. Well, firstly, these players were so exhausted by the end, it was a draw. And none of us knew what to do. Even people who had retired away from the game but were working in the football industry, that meant we all had to come back for work the following week because we've got a grand final replay.
I think the person who had the biggest grin on their face was Andrew Demetrio because he knew that they were going to sell out the grand final again. But look, I think back to that, there's so many, you talk about iconic moments in grand finals. I did think at the game when I was there, when Brendan Goddard took that mark, I thought that was going to be like...
It wasn't just a mark, it was a hover.
I thought it was going to be like the Jezelenko type moment. You talk about that moment, you think of Lenny Hayes. I know Travis Cloke kicked a goal late.
Could you believe we had to go back again the following week? St Kilda were wounded, Collingwood were ready and weren't happy with the week before. But Heath Shaw and his smother on Nick Revolt, that's the smother of the century because he was like a pop-up sprinkler. He came from nowhere, he smothered the ball, and Nick Revolt went, where on earth did he come from? Was he hiding behind the post? Was he hiding in the crowd? That, unfortunately for Nick Revolt, is one of the moments that Collingwood will cherish forever.
I think as Dennis Cometti said, what did he say? He snuck up on him like a librarian.
Is that what he said?
He did.
I tell you what, you've got an amazing memory.
Speaking of ones of back-to-back grand finals, I think 2005 and 2006, they're both amazing grand finals, and talk about moments in each of the grand finals that were so iconic. And I think just for sheer weight of numbers of 2 grand finals in a row, so they get a double nomination.
It was a kick either way, and for some reason at that time, no side could get much of an advantage, and it always come down to the last minute or so. So they had an amazing rivalry. And they were 2 grand finals back to back, as you said.
So again, I know that we're talking about a single grand final, but 2005, you know what I'm going to say, Leo Barry, yes. You start. It's quite funny. Leo Barry's the guy that kicks it out before it comes back in. Dean Cox marks the ball, goes back in, and it's such a great iconic photo. When you look at all the hands, it's like when we used to play school footy and...
Well, I was always front and square because
front and square.
I never got to do a pack mark. Well, this one for me is definitely in. Hawthorn up against Geelong, underdogs. No one gave him a chance. Spiritual leader. It's going to be his last game. Oh, that's me.
Alistair Clarkson, what was the famous story about the Sharks?
What a lot of people don't realise that for a long time, 3 or 4 years under Alistair Clarkson, we were rehearsing a full ground zone and a rolling zone. So wherever the ball would go, we'd try and block that area of the field. And we were pretending that the Cats were sharks, because when sharks get caught in the net, they die. Not that we wanted the Cats to die, we just didn't want them to score goals. So any weak link, it all breaks down. So yes, so Clarko, and he's not very good at drawing, because on the whiteboard, he drew an outline of a shark on the whiteboard before we ran out. And I didn't know what it was. It was a hippopotamus or an elephant. I said, what's that on the board? But he put the shark fin, so that was the shark, and that was the motivation that got us across the line.
And then I know there was some blonk at the end of the game saying, that's what I'm talking
Didn't
about.
get a kick all game and said, yeah, hey, how good is this? But I'll tell you the thing about Stewie Jew. Silveriola, that was his first year. We sent him home about 3 weeks earlier because he was a bit homesick. So he went home for 3 or 4 days just to connect with his family, came back, had a wonderful final series. And Stewie Jew, people forget, he retired from Port Adelaide. He was a super player there, went over to America. He trained hard, got himself going again. In the grand final, he was meant to be playing half back. He was so exhausted. We had the ability where we could swap positions as long as you did everything that position needed.
Yeah.
So he moved himself forward. It wasn't Alistair Clarkson, the master coach. Stewie Jew moved himself forward, and the rest is history.
What about this one where it was, I actually did go to this game, Collingwood and West Coast in 2018. Remember pre-game, it was such an amazing atmosphere inside the MCG, but look, the way that the Magpies started, you just thought how far Collingwood, but West Coast, they slowly ground them down. It was all those tools that got them all going. And again, you talk about iconic moments. Well, Dom Sheed kicked that goal from the boundary line the last quarter with ice in his veins, and to be able to do that right in front of the Collingwood members, even begrudgingly, they got the thumbs up from the Collingwood fans.
But from a West Coast point of view, Dom Sheed, no one's ever going to forget that kick.
Now, so we're thinking that's over there.
I think that has to be number one.
Number one, okay.
Well, it's just such an iconic.
We've still got, I tell you what's another favourite of mine, the Western Bulldogs versus Sydney in 2016. For the long-suffering Western Bulldogs fans, I don't think...
62 years.
It's not very often that Sydney, we all love watching Sydney play, but on that day, I think everyone turned into a Western Bulldogs fan. And I think the iconic moment for me was the tackle, Tom Boyd kicking that goal. That really was the moment of the grand final and saw the breaking of the premiership drought.
Yeah, Dale Morris nails Buddy Franklin. Tom Boyd, who was much maligned because he's getting the big...
Probably should have won the Norm Smith.
And he was an amazing player during the final series. He was the reason the Bulldogs were able to win the grand final. I don't think anyone was against the Bulldogs winning, you know. And on top of that, you got Luke Beveridge, the coach, gets up and he receives his medallion, the Jock McHale medallion. And then he calls Robert Murphy up, who's their spiritual leader, wasn't playing because of a knee injury, out for the rest of the year. And then he places it over him, so there wasn't a dry eye in the house. There was so much love for the Bulldogs, and that definitely has to go in there somewhere.
Carlton and Essendon, 1993, the Baby Bombers, the most unlikely of premierships against the much, probably red-hot favourite in Carlton. Bombers getting the job done in 1993.
Mercedes, Mercury, a guy called, I don't know if you heard of him, James Hurd. And all young kids coming through. And the thing is, I think a lot of coaches love having young players in their side because they're coachable, but
Dustin Fletcher.
They just believe in themselves, you know. Dustin Fletcher was still at school. So he was still at school. I played against him in the school team only probably 2 months earlier. And he was playing on guys like Tony Lockett, Jason Dunstall, you know, the best fullbacks in the land. He's about this thick. And he had to get out there and do it. So it had everything. And Kevin Sheedy, once again, proving that no matter how young you are, you can still get the job done.
And we're saving one of the best games to last, Geelong and St Kilda. Sorry for all those long-suffering St Kilda fans out there. Just a really wet, dour game that became synonymous with the famous Matty Scarlett toe poke very late in the game. Which, by the way, it was again, I watched some footage on this game. Matty Scarlett was the one who kicked the ball into the middle of the ground, so he really had to redeem himself and get after the ball. Can you imagine being the defender that kicks the ball in the middle of the ground, then you watch it go back over your head? And he did redeem himself in spectacular fashion.
And Zach Dawson almost has a perfect spoil, and it becomes a different play. But the toe poke from Matty Scarlett, because normally if you're going to kick the ball off, you normally just kick it as far as you can. It was just a little toe poke to the little master, Gary Ablett. And then Paul Chapman, where do you go when the ball comes in? Front and square. It's simple as that. That's what I say to all the young kids. You ever want to get a kick playing AFL footy, go front and centre or front and square, and the ball will come to you at some stage. You just got to keep going to that spot. And Paul Chapman kicks the goals, breaks St Kilda's heart. Oh, what a game. I'll tell you what, we got such a tough decision here with all of these games, but that was remarkable as well. And that is the toe poke of the century, one of the best kicks you're ever going to see with such perfect touch, even though it was a little toe poke.
We've got Collingwood, St Kilda, which we're in total agreement about.
Yes.
The Sydney West Coast, I nearly said trilogy, but it's a...
Well, yeah, it sort of doubles up there.
It doubles up. 2005, 2006, has to be in there. Two of the iconic moments in either game. Collingwood and West Coast, such a cracking game, and Dom Sheed finished.
It's definitely in the top five, yeah.
They're in there. Yeah. The Western Bulldogs breaking the drought against the Sydney Swans. Now the rest of them were up for debate. You know what? I know you really want this, and
don't do it.
I know he doesn't. I know he doesn't want it, but for mine, it is. And I'm not just saying it because he is here.
Don't do it.
It was great.
You're not going to make it number one, are you?
No, it's not going to be number one. Hey, don't go that far. I'm not going. I know. But in all honesty, look, I think for the moments that we described,
I will shout your lunch.
Yes, I love a good chicken parma here. But look, the moments I described with Cyril on the wing, the whole mentality of the Hawks,
Stewie
Jew, and then your moment at the end of the game, you can't beat it.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's in the top five.
That's in the top five.
Corey McKernan put that in our top five. It wasn't me. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you. Now you owe me lunch.
Tab. Download the app today.